So for our main speaker, thank you, Curtis. That was awesome. And so for our Alan, our AA speaker, it comes to us, great expense. We brought in my friend Tony, who is a part of the,
Friday Night Big Book Study Workshop.
Friday Night Big Book Study. And, I feel very fortunate that at such short notice he said that he would come and share with you guys tonight. So with that, Mr. Tony, come on up.
Right on. Recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony.
Hi, Tony.
I'd like to welcome anybody new or coming back to the Fellowship of AA. Good place to start. Thank you for your share. So I'll do a disclaimer. This is my story. A lot of people get upset with my story. It's my story. If I offend you, pray about it. And the more you pray, the better I get. Honest, try it. The hardest part about my share is staying present. And how it works, they talk about there are those two. I don't know who's going to show up. Either one of these guys could show up. I don't know where I go on my talks. I usually start here and end up somewhere. I kind of pray ahead of time. I'm not one of those cookie cutter talks, and I just start somewhere. Somebody needs to hear something, and I trust that God, as I understand Him, and I serve that the message will be carried. And those that are new, welcome. I see the look of what new people look like. I know that look, right? Thinking, and you won't figure it out. So you might as well relax and just take it easy. It's not one of our slogans. Figure it out. Just relax. Try to be where your feet are. I think Chuck taught me that a long time ago. The hardest part about life is being where your feet are. We're always trying to be somewhere we have no control over, and we're everywhere but where we are, right? And so, if you kind of ruined your life, that's your job. And if you're looking for a better life, that's our job, right? And a vision for you is a great topic. 42 years ago when this first Roundup was happening was my first AA meeting. I was 16 years old when I got introduced to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I qualified. I talk in a real general way. I like the idea of hope that's available here. I was talking to a young guy yesterday. I can't even believe I'm saying that. 27 years old. That's when I sobered up. I finally got the message. You hear people say the gift of desperation, and what that really translates to is the gift of the desperateness of needing God, that silent prayer within, like, help me, that prayer of help me, because I can't continue to go the way I'm going anymore. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure everybody said that prayer, right? There's got to be something better than what I'm living. And what's really weird is it's not your voice. It's a voice within inside of you that says there's something different for me than what I'm living and experiencing. I've been in conflict with myself since the first time I could imagine. I got junior kindergarten report cards saying if Tony could just get along with other kids better, right? If he could learn to not communicate using his fist, it'd be really, I got kicked out of junior kindergarten when I was, for 2 weeks for splitting a guy's chin open with a chair. So it gives you a rough idea what you're dealing with up here today, right? So when I found a drink, I thought it was the best thing that ever happened to me, but I can't remember my first drink. Right, because it was a part of our house. And same with what I understand now, it was Valiums. My mom told me they're vitamins. So they used to call babysitters, right? Here, mom's going out, have a couple of these, right? Anyways, one of those stories. So I grew up in the streets of Toronto. I kind of became a custody of the ward at 8.5 years old, the Sacred Hearts Children's Village. I lived in that facility for 4 years. Been to 13 different schools, not counting the same schools twice. I became an introvert at a really young age because I just got the idea that nobody kind of wanted me or wanted anything to do with me, and I was a burden on everyone and everywhere I went, and everybody had a preconceived idea of me based where I grew up. I come from a Roman Catholic background. So my mom not being married and having kids out of wedlock and coming from a mixed background, you could only imagine how that went back in my era when I grew up. That was kind of unheard of. So a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of stuff like that. And I can't say my mom was an alcoholic, but she sure enjoyed drinking. And the people she hung around with was of the type of people that you don't usually find in the bank getting loans. So I don't know how else to say that, right? So there's my dad's story, my mom's story, and my story. I'll try to stick to my story, right? And it's kind of really interested. Today I'm amazed with my story. I think it's the best story I've ever heard, right? Because it's my story, right? I never got here feeling that way. I had the worst story when I got here. And I got here a lot of times. So I think I want to, that vision for you is pretty wild. When I was sitting there talking to that young guy, it was kind of reflecting back when I was 27, and I just turned 27, and where I was at, and this guy had a conversation with me of the life that was available here to me if I was willing to do certain things. And I think looking back, he really undersold it. He really undersold what was available here, but at the time what he was talking was far beyond my scope of understanding, or even kind of even seeing that was a possibility that I could have this life that he was talking about and experiencing. But backing up, there's a thing that happens here, an underlying connection to something beyond our understanding, right? They use this word a lot in our basic text, a phenomena or phenomenon, right? Unexplainable events that seem to be the basis of our life. And like alcoholism is a really unexplainable event that we try to make it explainable by using certain terms and understanding. But really, even the book talks about the phenomena of craving, right? Or the phenomena of our illness. And they describe this illness as being twofold. We like to think it's threefold, but it's actually twofold. There's only two symptoms in alcoholism. There's a lot of misunderstanding around it, and I had a lot of that misunderstanding. Like I said, I was introduced to AA when I was 16, and I heard there was hope here, but I was never able to grasp on to the message of depth and weight. Because I grew up in systems, so I was the type of guy to go into a room or go into a system or go into a facility, and I'd be able to see who's who in the zoo and kind of see what was happening. I'd go into a bar and I know who exactly to levitate toward, probably nobody like this. I'd watch the envelopes happening below the table. I'd watch the people who were packing. I knew who's who. I'd move to a new town and I'd find my people within half an hour getting off a bus. I don't know if any, right? I just was a magnet for people like me, right? I was in grade 9, and they hooked up a special class for us, all the misfits of the high school, and the vice principal was the math teacher of that class, so we all had to behave. And so one day he decided he was going to take everybody's inventory in that class, and he was going up and down the aisles, and he was informing everybody about the characteristics of each person and why they were in that class. And he came up to me and he stopped and he says, "Tony, I'm going to get back to you." And he continued on with the other people. And then he came to me, and this is kind of like the kind of conditioning of my life. He started talking and I just didn't hear a single word he said. He talked, I don't know for how long, and that was like most people tried to talk to me or try to get my attention about my life, and I just didn't hear them. I just didn't hear what they were saying. I had the keen ability to ignore it, not hear, which I understand is self-protection. Because if you told me the truth about me, why would I want to know the truth about me other than what I seen about me? Because I couldn't change it anyways. There was always a desire to live a life different than I was living. Even from a young age, I kind of, when I look back, the theme of my life was nobody wanted me, and I just had to make do with where I was and stay there as long as possible until the next episode of the next foster care, the next situation, right? The next town, the next person, the next kind of. I was kind of one of those guys that just look at a picture of my family and they would take care of the loneliness and despair from within. I'd look at a picture and it'd kind of take care of that need and the separation from everybody. So, a lot of people talk about their first drink. I don't think it's really the first drink that when it happens, because I'm allergic to pistachios, and I don't know the first time I was having a reaction, but the first time I felt a noticeable reaction and got my attention, I had flu-like symptoms, right? And I ignored it. I kind of sloughed it off. And then there came a time where I couldn't ignore the symptoms anymore. I ate it, my throat started closing up, and I ended up in hospital, and they told me that I suffer from an allergic reaction to pistachios, and I can't eat them whatsoever, and I've never eaten them since. I got a warning, had the effect. and all that other stuff. I kind of like the effect produced by them. That's a different fellowship, I think. So, throat closing, joking. Almost blacked out. It was good till that point. It's going to be one of those meetings. All the new people are sitting up now. Okay. So it's one of those things. So when the nurse told me my situation, I never went back to or even desired it. Every time I went into a grocery store, I'd see them. Part of my brain goes, well, it'd be nice, but based on truth, I'd never ate them again. I have no desire to eat them again. I don't want to eat them again as much as I enjoyed them. Not so with alcohol. The first time I felt the magic in a drink, it changed everything. I remember I was probably 15. I was getting probably drunk before that. I was loaded. I can't even remember the first time I dabbled and everything, but I was running with when I got out of that controlled environment, 14 and a half, I got hooked up with my cousin, and he got me involved in a small business. And I was helping him with certain things, and it paid quite well. And I'd party with these guys, and they thought it was a big joke because I was like 14, 15. My cousin was probably 27, and he was left over from the 60s. This is back in the 70s. And these guys were party guys. That's when stuff was coming in big barrels, so like whatever, anyways. And so they're who's in the zoo kind of thing. And I'd go to their place, and they would start partying with me, and I'd pass out on the floor, and I'd come to, and the room would be filled with adults all laughing that I couldn't even make it till the start of the party. But it wasn't long till I was the last one staying up, and I was the light of the party. But I never really felt the magic in alcohol. The first time I really felt the magic in alcohol, I was doing restaurant taverns with a couple friends. That's when the exit doors used to swing out. The hinges were on the outside of the door. You could pop them off with anyways. So now they swing them. They changed the whole system. We take the exit doors off, go in, take the liquor out of the facilities, put the door back on, and we'd have enough to party. That's when you just shut the alarm off. It was a sound. Anyways, don't even get into all that stuff. Give you a rough idea. So I'd leave 40s at different places, probably 15 at this time, and then a couple kids came up, and they were 16 and 17 or 17 and 18, and I was with my girlfriend and a friend in Malton, and I was getting used to the neighborhood, and I remember they came up and they were drinking. They started harassing me and my friend, and I remember the fear and anxiety I felt from these older kids harassing me, and then the embarrassment. And when they went away, I remember the embarrassment of how I should have handled the situation, and the look on my friend's face and my girlfriend's face, and I started interpreting what they were thinking. And I went to my friend's place, I poured a big glass of rum, and as I started finishing that rum, things started to change in me in a way that became really, really spectacular. I started becoming 6'2". I started becoming 220 pounds. By the time I finished the second glass of rum straight out of the glass, I was a second-degree black belt. And I went looking for these guys. I went right through the front door. I called them both outside, and I cleaned both of their clocks. I found the promises. I found the magic in alcohol. That's the magic in alcohol. It allowed me to become a different person. It allowed me not to be that person I was sober. It allowed me to become everything. It just like all the promises came true. I intuitively knew how to handle situations that used to baffle me. I didn't regret the past, nor was to shut the door on it. I seen how my experience could benefit others. I was something. Nobody like that here, right? And so next time I had a problem, what did you think my keen intellectual thinking thought of? I have a drink. So this continued on. I think, to make a long story short, I was standing on the 18th floor of a balcony before my 16th birthday, and I was thinking on jumping. I was looking down at the dumpster. I think I was on a 2-day drunk at this time, and I was doing some peyote and other things, microdot, and all the good stuff. It keeps the, methamphetamine, just all the party favors, right? But I'm a real alcoholic. But I mean, you gotta be polite when people offer you stuff, right? You just gotta, no, thank you. That's not my drug of choice. No, it's like when I get going, what do you got, right? I'm one of those guys. Is what do you got? If it don't put you to sleep, I'll try it again. You know what I mean? Oh my God. 15. Story haven't even started yet. So I'm on the balcony and I'm thinking, about my life, and if I have to continue on like this, and the guilt, the shame, the remorse, the horrors of the life I lived, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff that happened to me, and the lifestyle I come from, and the confusion and the pain, and the people who were my mentors, and so I was very confused and without guidance. When I was in the system, at least I had guidance, I had food, it was kind of. And so I remember thinking of killing myself, and then I thought of my funeral, and somebody talked about that earlier, and I don't know why. Anybody spend time thinking about their funeral here? We romance that, eh? I don't actually want to see it, but I romance it, and everybody going by the casket, and you know what I mean? Oh, we loved him so much, he had so much potential and everything. And then you're just building it up, right? And then that one aunt goes by and says, I knew it, see the little bastard, right? And then I get resentful at her. None of this is happening. I'm having a conversation on my head on the 18th floor of this balcony. I get resentful at her, and then I think I'm going to show you. But at that moment, there was something sent out to the universe, I believe. It seemed like in Bill's story, the second time he ended up in treatment, he kind of that loneliness and despair and that kind of feeling of hopelessness. And shortly afterwards, Ebby showed up in Bill's life. Bill didn't call Ebby called Bill, right? And it's pretty, when you get into that story, if you've been kind of new here, and you kind of seen each one of our stories is kind of like that. Somebody intervened in our life to have us here today. And then shortly afterwards, off that balcony, I got a phone call on my 16th birthday. And again, I'm blasted, and I'm kind of I'm into the microdot, I'm into the Thai stick, and I'm drinking Boilermakers, and life's happening. It's my 16th birthday. I get this call, and this gentleman says, he's looking for this individual. And I said, look, pal, the phone book's full of those guys, right? Why are you bugging me? He says, well, I'm your dad. And that kind of sent me for a real loop-de-loop, because I'm peeking, and so I sat down, and I was kind of whoa, because I'm living under an alias at this time, and I just found out my real name to get my social insurance number. It's one of those stories. It's just kind of it just kind of goes on and on. There's something on the other side of the track. So I just found out, my dad just found out where I was through my godmother, because she was really worried of me. She was one of those ladies that sat me down on where I was going, what was happening, and she was kind of really concerned. I was ending up in my dad's footsteps. My dad's kind of, he ended up passing 39 years sober. So when I met him, he was 3 years sober, and he's ex-member of a couple groups not involved in AA. And he got 12-step in the sanitarium by one of the people in his dorm, right? He was locked up for a danger to himself and the people around him. His last drunk, he ended up on the front lawn with a World War II bayonet. His what do we call those big, huge St. Bernard, taking on 8 cops and cutting the roof off of a convertible. So they locked him up for being a little cheese off his cracker kind of thing, right? And a guy 12-stepped him in the sanitarium. He found God, and he had a vital spiritual experience, and at 3 years sober, he found me. And so when he kind of talked to me on the phone, he says, hey, I'm a member of AA. I don't know what that means. He says, I've been sober a while. I don't know what that means. I like to make amends. I don't know what that means. So I don't know none of the lingo that he's using. And that's like being new. You don't hear all this, all this talk and all this lingo. But he said he'd like to meet me and my mom and kind of make amends and stuff like that. So my mom comes home, and I say, hey, this guy phones. He says he's my dad. She says, we're moving. Because the last time I had any contact with him, he showed up at my godmother's place where I was living. Long story short, when I was still an infant, because he nearly killed me before that, and I was hospital. Long story short, in a blackout, and so I had a lot of trauma from that incident. And so when he showed up at my godmother's place with a gun looking to get me back, my godmother gave him one of those dolls wrapped in a blanket, and he took off with that. And that was the last time we ever had any contact with him, and my mom went into Toronto and lived under an alias. right? So that's kind of like, but if you ask me about my story, that was just normal living. The people I lived with, the people I grew up with, it was all part of the game. It was the people who got stuff, the people who got rid of stuff, the people who wore suits, the people who wore leathers, the people who had this kind of front of a life that was really this kind of life, people who moved, just it was all part of the thing. And I learned how to navigate my life through these kind of people, right? I would be able to feel the energy of a room, how to conduct myself. And it was kind of talked about that earlier, whether we came out, the people came back from the bars with their wigs and their fur coats and all that other stuff and the high heels. When they came back from that house we lived in with the heroin addicts, and that's back with the eyedroppers and all that stuff, it was kind of like whether we came out and enjoyed the party or we stay hidden. Or where we went to bed to sleep in our own bed, or we went and found a closet where nobody could find us. And so it was just me and my sister. My mom always raised us, says, I might not come home one night. I want you guys to know you guys could look after yourself. So we learned how to cook. We learned how to look after ourselves. But it was always that fear. Some nights we'd be waiting at the table for my mom to come home with food. She would unwrap it. She would steal her dinner from the stuff and give it to us kids. So it was that kind of environment. So I already started with a warped idea of life, the people in it, and everything associated with that. So when I took that drink, it kind of took care of all that stuff, because I just didn't really care anymore. And I was able to compartmentalize where I was, who I was, and I was able to live in today and be where my feet were. I was able to just kind of function. I went from situation to situation. One situation get too hot, I just go to another situation. I just move and keep relocating. I never made decisions. It was always alternative. What's the alternative here? If I stay here, this is going to happen. So I got to get moving. These people help me. I learned how to do things alone. You do things with people, you get caught. Right? I just learned how to live this stuff. And it's not like I made a conscious decision, hey, you know what, I'm going to do these things. I just did these things. I just learned how to do it from a young age. So when I went to this meeting for the first time and I sat in the back, I didn't really hear nothing in that meeting, but I got something that inside that said I didn't have to live or feel the way I was feeling or living anymore. And I remember starting sobriety, and things were fantastic. I had my dad, life was great, and I just finished getting on, was this my clock, right? Is that 10 after? Mm-hmm. Wow, just moving right along here, right? So I just finished, had some charges taken care of, and I had probation and conditional discharges based on some criminal activity other people were involved in, and I was just standing there minding my own business when the cops showed up. Total misunderstanding. So anyway, I met my dad, and things were fantastic, and I was traveling from Toronto to Cambridge, and things were great, and finally I had somebody. I never had anybody before, and finally I had somebody to look after, and I started building that trust again. And I went to his place, and because I never trusted nobody. My mom taught me not even to trust or depend on nobody, nobody. Because if you have to depend on anybody, if you have to wait on anybody, you're going to be in trouble. If you can't depend on yourself, you're in trouble. You get yourself into a situation, you get yourself out, you got nobody to depend on. I don't know if anybody has that kind of thinking here, but it was deep within inside of myself. So when I met my dad, I kind of started building that idea that here's somebody I could trust, here's somebody that loves me. I thought, what a great idea. So I kind of became that son that I thought, I'm going to AA, I'm going to church, I'm in the Baptist church, I found God. Because that's what it says and how it works, right? May you find him now, so I found him now. You know what I mean? And then, and I'm in the choir, man, I'm Mr. Beaning it. Like I'm living the part. Like it's good, like life is good. But inside, nothing's changing. Outside, chameleon, everything's changing, and I'm adopting this new identity, right? And things are really good. And I remember I got a breach of probation, and my dad was 17. I got a breach of probation. I was working at Douglas Aircraft. My life is going good. My life is going really good. I got into the union. I was the youngest guy to get into Douglas Aircraft, building aircraft wings and stuff like that, and life's going good. My dad said, you know what, don't worry about a lawyer. I'll come represent you. I'll come tell them what you've been doing about the community services, the church, and the new life you're living, and the transition you made in your life, and things are fantastic. I think I'm 6 months sober, 7 months sober. And I'm standing in court waiting for my AA dad to show up. My dad didn't show up. I got 3 months. And I pushed that down, and I never gave it another thought. But when it came up in my inventory, see what happens when you trust people? See what happens when you depend on people? And I just didn't give it another thought like anything. I just didn't kind of care. So I carried on life. So now when I'm coming to AA, and you people are talking to me, I'm not trusting you. I'm not even letting you close to me. I'm watching and trying to navigate, picking up what you people are doing, trying to mimic that in my life, picking up on all these bumper stickers saying, sitting in these 12 and 12 meetings, nobody's explaining alcoholism to me. I'm trying to treat it like a behavioral problem. I'm getting drunk all the time. And I can't figure this out. I rebuild my life and things are fantastic. And then I'd get drunk again. And it was just like one day I'm living this sober life, and the next day I'm living this other life. It was just like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. It's like I had a split personality, what I did. And it was very confusing because I was really trying. Got another job, went to Westinghouse. Things were fantastic. And I'd kept on getting loaded, right? And I'd go to treatment. I went to this one treatment. God bless him. Anyways, I got out of there with a certificate. And I left there and I got loaded. And then I went back there again. And I remember we're sitting in a group therapy. You guys do still group therapy? You all sit in a circle taking each other's inventory? So they were sitting in this group. Nobody wanted to take my inventory. Giving you a rough idea where I'm getting at. And you sign this friendship list that when you leave, you phone each other. Right? So the counselor was quite concerned. He took me aside. He says, Tony, he says, nobody wants to sign this list. I said, why not? They said, because you're going to get it. You're going to get the list. And I couldn't figure out why. I thought they all liked me. I always liked them. I thought things were fantastic. But the way I thought and the way they thought were two different things, because they were taking my inventory. They said, well, your girlfriend's at home drinking. I said, yeah. And she's with your friends. I said, yeah. Says, how do you know your friends aren't hitting on your girlfriend? It says, because they know I'll crack their head open with a baseball bat. I said, I don't have to trust my girlfriend. I already know I can't trust her. All I need to do is trust my friends. So nobody wants to sign this card and be my friend after we leave treatment. But the funny thing was, when they told me that, I just smiled and looked at them all. But the truth was, I went back to my room and I started crying because I didn't want to be perceived that way or be that kind of person. I didn't know not how to be that kind of person. So I was always in conflict with myself, right? And I didn't know how to be the person who I really was inside, because that wasn't a safe person to be within the world I grew up in, or how to conduct myself. So I was always in conflict with me. But when I took a drink, it seemed like there was no conflict at all, until that person on the outside kept on ruining the consequences of my drinking. So I'd go to this meetings and talk about relapse and leaving treatment and all this other stuff. And I joined the Queensway Saturday night group. No, this is even before that. I was going to these meetings and these guys were talking about, why I couldn't get sober. And this is the backing up. I'm probably 18, can't get sober, getting ready to turn 19. And then a member said, the reason you can't get sober is because you lack discipline. Well, it makes sense. And when I look at my life, I say I have no structure, no discipline. I've kind of never really had any kind of real guidance. So I'm sitting there over a drink thinking about how to reconstruct my life. I don't know if anybody's done their best thinking over a drink on what you should do. What's the problem? There's something seriously wrong with my life here as I take a drink. Then the thought came to me, where would a guy get discipline? The Army. I'll join the Army. So I went down to the recruiting office to sign up. Now, back then, I had an afro that was shoulder wide. I'm running 6'2", and back then they had Master Johns. I don't know if anyone old enough to remember Master John. There were 6-inch running shoes, man, and overalls, and I had a white T-shirt with a fist on it. I was high joints in my hair, I was having with the fork up there, and right. Anyways, I go to the recruiting office. Why, hello there. Hey, what's happening? I'd like to get me some discipline and join the Army. So I met a girl there who was doing the same thing in the recruiting office. We meet our own people, eh? So I met her, she met me, and we fell in love. So I had to qualify her. I got some liquor, and she was able to hold it. So I figured she was worth dating. Nothing worse than drinking, dating a non-drinker, eh? So we hooked up. And she invited me for dinner to go meet her parents. I think it was our second date or something like that, right? It's about right. Like AA dating is second date is a U-Haul, isn't it? AA foreplay, would you like to go for coffee? So now you know the code, right? When the guy goes, hi, I'd really like to help you. I'll meet you where nobody's a witness. Stay away from them. You know what you're getting into, right? And everybody smiles. We know. Yeah, they'll pay, won't they, girls? Okay, so... Anyway, why did I go there? I don't know. So I go to the bar with my buddies, and I said, I got to go meet this girl's parents in the suburbs. Where are the suburbs? They said, that's the small districts outside the city. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, what's the protocol? What do you got to do? They said, what you got to do is bring a nice bottle of wine. Makes sense, isn't it? So I'm going to be one of those guys that bring a bottle of wine to dinner. So I go to the liquor store and I buy, I go look at, I'm a wine connoisseur. I don't know if I've ever told anybody that. You look at alcohol content. That's the first thing you look at when buying a bottle of wine, isn't it? Back then, the most alcohol in a bottle of wine was 11%. Then the next important thing is volume. Is it not? And sale. So I'm looking at this bottle of wine, 1.5 liters. And it had a gold lid because you don't want the corks. I had too much trouble. It's cracked. It had a gold lid. And it was like, some of you are probably too young, but it was baby duck. And the guy who made that bottle is an alcoholic because it had a slip lip on it. That means the bottle can't slip out of your hand. It had a lip along the top. When you're walking with it, it doesn't slip out of your hand. It has it actually stops from slipping. It's like a baseball bat lid on it, right? It's like perfect. So I buy one of those things. I'm going to the counter like I'm holding a newborn because I'm proud about my purchase to bring to my girlfriend's place to meet her parents. And I'm almost at the counter and I think, maybe there's somebody else that's going to want to drink. I go back and I get another 1.5 liter of wine. This is making perfectly good sense to me. Anybody else? What I understand now that I didn't understand then is because the way I think was I had an allergy to alcohol, meaning an abnormal reaction, and I knew I had to acquire so much to meet or pass my expectations of consumption. But I didn't know that because in all that time in AA, nobody told me about the disease concept of alcoholism. But walking up to that counter with the 3 liters of wine, I bought it, hopped on my motorcycle with these 2 gold lids sticking out of my leather coat, going up the 400 highway. Now, the reason you wear leather is to protect yourself from the elements. You don't put things inside your coat, especially of glass containers. You leave them outside your coat. I got them both in my coat, and the gold lids are sticking out, and I'm looking out, and I'm smiling like I'm proud. So I show up at her door, and I knock on her door. She opens the door, and she looks at me. I open my coat and go, ta-da! And she gives me one of those blank looks, like, what are you doing? She goes, we're going out later. I said, oh, yeah, this is just for dinner. So I don't remember dinner. And I don't remember going out, but I remember coming to in the bar and talking to her friends. And I was the type of drinker, start with my nice dress shirt down, being impressive. And as I drink, my sleeves go up. You people know those you ladies know those kind of guys, right? And my demeanor starts changing. My teeth start growing a bit. My knuckles start getting longer and start getting hairier. And I start grunting. Right? Anyways, and I'm becoming a vision for you. Oh my God. And then I remember driving her car, coming down to 401. She's saying, slow down, slow down. I don't even know I'm driving, right? And I come to and I look down and I'm doing like 120, 130. I'm trying to figure out where I am, who am I talking to, and what's going on. Thank God I went into another blackout. Because I reconsumed my ability to drive, right? I was kind of panicky there for a second. Then I came to hugging her toilet. Any toilet huggers here? With the porcelain resting on my face, just kind of the coolness, right? And I'm thinking as I'm getting sick, it's all the grenadier, like purple and red, and it's not the amount I drank. Like I'm drinking zombies, 3 liters of wine, beer, shots, and I'm getting ready to go to the army. I'm leaving for the army the next day. Afro, black eye, something happened, black eye, smelling like vomit. On her floor, buck naked on the tiles. So as her parents try to open the bathroom door, anyways, it's a long story, forget it, let's go somewhere else. That's just one episode. You know, anybody like tile floors here? They're the best. Anybody ever go apartment hunting? How close the toilet is to the sink, very important. No decisions need to be made with that, right? You don't need a bucket beside the thing when anybody clean the drain as you're, anyways. All part of professional drinking. Come on, people. You need to know these things because you can't stop doing them, right? Tile floors are fantastic. It just brings the body temperature down for when you're overamping. It's kind of embarrassing when it's other people's places or a public venue, but other than that, it's kind of all right. So I ended up on this plane, afro like this, smelling a bit like the night before, and I'm sick. And I understand now what I didn't understand then. I'm sitting between a captain and a lieutenant in the front of the plane, and in my leathers and all that other stuff. But now I'm wearing my dad's biker boots, and I got a black leather jacket, black hair. The guy goes on, where are you going, son? I said, I think I'm going to Cornwallis, the place. It's a boot camp or something like that. He says, oh, you're really going to enjoy it. I said, I think it's going to be fun. So anyhow, the Army is not a good place for people who suffer from alcoholism. I got out of there just before leaving for Cyprus. I was 22, vomiting blood. I'm having bleeding ulcers. I leave there, end up back in the streets of Toronto, and I got hooked up with all my friends and stuff like that. And then a situation happened where I'm starting to suffer from more blackouts, and my story's getting more horrific. Because like I said, 6'2", qualified equivalent to a second-degree black belt. Now I got 2 years of infantry training. So, I black out. When I black out, things happen. So I got into a fight with one of my friends over a bottle in a bar, and I nearly killed him in a fight. I split him open between anyways, whatever. And that episode kept me sober for 16 months. And then I was sitting at a restaurant tavern, and at this time, I'm probably 5 years in and out of AA. My dry date's in pencil. I'm in 12 and 12 studies, and I'm trying to get sober, and nobody's talking to me. Nobody's really paying any attention because now I'm a little crazy. Like I thought I was crazy, but now I am crazy. Anybody ever try to confront me? I'm having confrontations in meetings. I'm telling people where to go. People are teaching me the traditions. You're not allowed to drag people out of meetings. Everybody has the right to be here. When you come here, leave the table, the chairs, and all that other stuff where they belong. So, they tried to get me as a greeter. That lasted half an hour. I didn't like the way the guy was shaking my hand. There was a confrontation in the doorway, so they got me setting up chairs. What I learned in AA, setting up chairs at the home group, Queensway Saturday group, the most valuable piece of thing I've learned in that whole meeting was you set the chairs on the lines. I was setting up with this old timer. I said, set up chairs any way you want. He'd come up behind me and says, if you can't do the little things to the best of your ability, how do you expect to do the big things? I thought, you whack job. I'm thinking this guy's nuts. I did that for about 3 months. He stopped showing up. This other guy showed up, a new guy. He was setting up the chairs the way I used to, and I'd walk behind him. If you can't do the little things to the best of your ability, and that's kind of like how AA worked, and I was hoping that's how this thing would have worked and how I would have got this thing, by just coming to meetings and grasping on what people were saying, because that's how I got through my whole life. I figured things out before they happen, be able to read things, be able to catch things, be able to figure out the system, implement it, and work the system to my advantage. That's how I tried to do the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody back when I was getting sober was using the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was all 12 and 12. Novelco, and outside things. So as a result of that, I never found any kind of viable solution to treat alcoholism. What I found was temporary relief from myself, but alcoholism lay dormant. I didn't even know the basic understanding of alcoholism. So April 6th, I was sitting in Riddler's. There's a restaurant tavern on Lake Shore that's run by a couple friends and the groups that I was hanging around with at the time. And the lady walked up to me and asked me if I wanted something for my coffee. I remember what I did 16 months prior to that, and I said no. Then suddenly the thought crossed my mind, you know what? You know yourself so much better now. It was your character defects. I learned about character defects. I learned about shortcomings. I learned about behavior modification. You just got to raise the work. Life's been going really good. Why not? She poured something into my coffee, which I understand today, looking back based on the understanding of alcoholism. What happened was the subtle form of insanity became paramount in my life. I had no defense against that. I took the drink, triggering the phenomenon of craving. Shortly afterwards, I ended up in Vancouver. That's a whole different story. But I got a visit from a sergeant and the riot police and all that other stuff. I was under surveillance for a long period of time. I won't even get into all that stuff, but they thought maybe it would be a good idea that I locate out here. And the power of prayer, I think, is one of the most amazing things. That if you kind of grasp anything, is the power of prayer. It's something, looking back on, I think it was something that I didn't realize was the most shifting, paramount thing happening in my life. I was sitting there talking to paintings, vomiting green bile. There was nothing left. I was talking to the radio announcer on the radio. He was playing all my favorite music. It was just me and him. I'm in one of those psychosis, like I'm not even getting arrested anymore. Like one guy told me to get out of his car. That's how I'm starting to go, like I'm not, but if you ask me, it's a little bit, I became a philosopher. Anyways, snap, crackle, pop. I was sitting there praying. And I was thinking my life. I said, what the hell? The girls from down the hall thought I was the nicest guy they ever wanted to meet. They never seen me drink. Anyways, that's another, I'm not even going there even with that story. But they came over and they were looking at me. They were driving me to court, actually, because I thought if I stayed up, I had trial on Monday. I said, well, I'll just party Friday, Saturday. So Sunday came, I was going to drive myself to trial. They didn't think it was a good idea. They drove me to trial. I went to City Hall. And this is kind of the mentality. So I walked in there, and now I'm full of gold, because I'm hooked up with my buddies again, and I got all the gold, and I got the prestige on the outside. On the inside, I'm nuts. On the outside, I got this thing going on. I walked up to, I don't know, anybody ever been to court here? Nobody? So anyways, there's the front row, and then there's the crowd, and he has this thing like this, and he has all the files there, and all the lawyers go up first, right, with all the names. I walk up to the front row like this, and I look at the guys sitting there, and they all move, and me and my two friends sit down there, and the crowd comes back out. I got up while the judge was out. I said, hey, put me up next. I'm just here to set a date. He was a small guy like this. I said, I'm just here to set a date. I said, it's 10 to 10. The liquor store is opening in 10 minutes. I'm starting to sober up, and I don't need this. He just looked at me. I sat down. The judge came up and says, Mr. Roberts, I got upset a date and I left. I think about that stuff. Like, that's the grace of God all over me, man, because I'm on bail. I got some serious stuff happening. And the power of prayer was before that. Anybody ever do 911 prayers here? Like in the moment, like I'm 4 minutes ago, I wasn't even thinking about God. All of a sudden something happens, now I'm thinking about God. And any negotiators here? I'm on bail. Backing up just before this court system, during this court system, I'm on bail. And I'm coming off the Gardner Expressway. I'm on another 3-day run. I got a brick under the seat. I got things in my pocket. I got a 26er between my legs. I'm smoking a Cuban cigarette, non-filtered cigarette in the ashtray from Colombia. It helps motivate you. And I come off the Gardner Expressway, and there's a road check. I sat up. I put the cigarette in the ashtray. I can't even get rid of the 26er. I can't get rid of nothing. I said, God, you get me out of this. I'll go get my hair cut tomorrow. I'll go back to church on Sunday. I'll even go back to AA. I said, I will become that person you always wanted me to become if you get me out of this. Because I'm on bail. They waved me through. I picked up that cigarette and I said, my God, that was close. And that's how I go through life. Anybody go through life? That's how I go through life. When the desperateness of the situation is over, so is my conviction of change. Welcome to AA. So I ended up in Vancouver. I was sitting there talking to God, and the phone rang, and it was my brother that I didn't hear from in 2 years. And he sent me out. He said he was living in Vancouver. What was going on? I'll tell him what was going on. He says, well, come out here. So I came out here, and I came out here in my 79 Pontiac Le Mans, and I detoxed on the way out here. And like spider webs and the dry heaving and the bio and all that. So I drove out here. I brought my girlfriend at the time to finance the trip. That's another story. I took care of the list of people I still had to get even with. Took care of them to help finance the story. And then I came out here and I started my process in Alcoholics Anonymous. I came out here in 87, sorry. I was 25, came out here in 87. And I was in rough condition. My first meeting was in September because I had trial in August, which I skipped out on that. And I started my process in Alcoholics Anonymous. I made it 3 months, I relapsed. I made it 6 months, I relapsed. And then I made it my last relapse. I did 360 meetings in 90 days. I was in 412 and 12 studies. I just finished, it was April 6th. I just turned 27 years old. I went to the meeting and talked about what a great job I was doing keeping me sober. I was surrendering, I had the promises coming true, life was fantastic. I like to talk about this promise, her name is Brenda. I like to talk about this promise is my job. I like to talk about all the promises, all these exterior things to give the illusion of change. But inside I was the same person. I wasn't getting invited anywhere for coffee. I wasn't really, I was still a mess sober. So there's this guy named George. And he was one of those guys in the fellowship I'd feel better about. George K. Some of you would probably know me, passed away sober. He had a big red nose, and veins sticking out, and he had psoriasis. He would shake all the time, and if I ever get that bad, I'm cutting my own hair, by the way, at this time. And I got one of those knobs off the car handle to hold my glasses in place. They're in plastic. And I'm grunting and groaning. I'm talking in very... my vocabulary wasn't my strong suit. Put it that way, and I was in conflict with everything and everybody. So George got 12-stepped into a big book study workshop, and that's when the Joe and Charlie tapes were just happening, and Machine Gun Jerry was walking around with Rick and Steve, and what they would do is they would go from meeting to meeting to meeting looking for people who were dying of alcoholism, and it would invite you into a home group and take you through the process in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I just relapsed, and George asked me to come into this group. I said, it's okay, I know what not to do now, because I didn't understand alcoholism, what I was up against. I still understood it as a behavioral problem and about learning my lesson. My whole life has been learning my lesson, right? So they went through that process, and like I said, I relapsed, and George says, you've been around a long time, eh? I said, yeah, I've been around 11 years at this time, in and out. And he says, well, we're starting up this new group. He says, why don't you come and help us out? I said, let me run it by my sponsor. I went to my sponsor. I said, hey, these guys are starting a new step group up through, I didn't even know what it was. They said a new step group, and they're using these tapes, these Joe and Charlie tapes, and they want me to go there and help them. My sponsor says, I think that's a great idea. I think you should go next Tuesday and help them. So I show up this meeting thinking I'm going to take these guys through an experience that I've never done. Right? But I didn't know I've never done it because I've never done it, right? And I hung around with people that just sounded like me, right? You find your own kind. So we all sit around and impress each other. Boy, I really like what you had to say. Old-timers don't say that, right? Newcomers like newcomers, right? So they introduced me to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they started taking me through this. And for the first time in 11 years, I understood the disease concept of alcoholism. I understand alcoholism consists of two symptoms that makes one powerless over alcohol. Right? The first symptom is the physical allergy, is that when people like this take a drink, they get this thirst that makes them different than other people. right? Not everybody has this condition. It's called a phenomenon of craving. These allergic types, they learned that in the doctor's opinion. And it made good sense why I drank the way I did and I couldn't stop, and why I could not have consequences as a result of my alcohol consumption. I always thought I had a consequence problem. Now it made sense why I could not drink without consequence because of the allergy. And then when I wanted to stop, I found I couldn't stop because they talked about it's not the obsession, it's the malady that precedes the first drink. They talked about this phenomena that centers in the mind of an alcoholic, and is an unexplainable event. We really don't know how to explain it, but this is what it looks like, or the characteristic of those who have it. They make all the promises in the world, and they pass the lie detectors test, and they believe it. They believe it, they believe it, they believe it. And they have every reason in the world never to do it again. The snot running out of your nose, the pit of your stomach falling through, like never again, alone like never again. And then you do it again. You leave a meeting, you got a 3-month ship, and I'm never going to do it again. You do it again. And it made sense why I kept on doing this thing. They said the only thing for these types of people, or people like myself, is because I have an alcoholic mind. And as long as I have an alcoholic mind, I'll continue to drink. They said we have a solution for that, right? It's spiritual in nature. It's a group of steps, spiritual toolkit. If you're willing to put these things or implement them in their life, you'll create a psychic change or spiritual experience sufficient enough where you no longer have an alcoholic mind. Because I'm unqualified to deal with alcoholism before and after the steps. That's what I agreed to in step 1. It's beyond my pay grade to deal with. That's why I came to believe that something greater than me could take care of this problem that I can't take care of. It's either present or it's removed. I came to believe that if I did this thing, I'd have the same experience George did. And when they talked to me about this thing on page 63, they talked about a group of principles that would become personal to me, and that I'd tap into this inner resource of strength that I'd come to depend on. And it'd be a part of me that it would be the most precious thing in my life that I would rely on a daily basis. And they call it, our more religious members call it a God consciousness. I call it a connection to life force, the source that's always been there, and it's now personal to me. It's the voice that's always talked to me since I've been a little kid. It's always been that comforter within inside of me. It was that voice that always asked me, what am I doing? Why are you doing this? And I had no answers for it. Well, I was always doing acts against myself, and I'd always look in the mirror asking myself, why am I doing it? Why am I? Because of alcoholism. That's why I'm doing it. Alcoholism isn't me. It's a condition I suffer from. That's why I'm in conflict with it. I can't change this thing. As long as this thing's present, my life is never changing. It's going to get worse, never better. My 11 years in and out of the fellowship explains that. So they took me through this course of action, and what that means today is 30 years later, almost 31 years later, I no longer have an alcoholic mind. I have a daily reprieve from the alcoholism. I'm still an alcoholic, but I'm not suffering from alcoholism, right? Because if I'm suffering from alcoholism, I'm drinking. That's what they talk about. The problem is removed. It doesn't exist for us so long as we keep spiritually fit. That's the miracle of it. They talk about this thing as being a miracle, a phenomenon. They talk about this guy in here, and I was that guy. He went to the doctor who found out his condition, and he felt like the gates of hell was slammed shut on him because he was suffering from a condition that he couldn't fix, change, or alter on his own. He couldn't outmaneuver, outthink. It was something that lay dormant in his thinking that he couldn't see, feel, and touch. And when it became present, he was drinking. I understand that. That's the characteristic of an alcoholic mind. I'm sure some of you may relate to that. After I'm drinking, I ask myself, what am I doing drinking? Where was that thought beforehand? Just don't take the first one. Well, why didn't you tell me that? Oh, you did tell me that, right? I remember this guy, God bless him, another AA member that don't know what they're talking about. I said, I'm going to this party. He says, oh. I said, I'm really nervous. He says, just hang on to a ginger ale all night. And if anybody asks you if you want to drink, just say there wouldn't be enough for both of you. Wow, I found a solution to alcoholism. That sounded so profound. So I go to this party hanging on to this glass of ginger ale. You know how we do, we hold it up so everybody asks us what's in it, because we think when we're not drinking, everybody in the party should know we're not drinking. That should be on the 20 questions, shouldn't it? Do you feel it necessary to let everybody know you're not drinking? Well, yes. Right? So all night they're asking me, hey, Tony, you want a drink? I said, oh no, if I started, it wouldn't be enough for both of us. I'm feeling really good. Tony, do you want? No, I don't want a drink. I found the answer to alcoholism. The guy gets off work 11:15. I still remember, he's sitting across from me, he introduced me, he says, what do you drink? I said, oh, I'm drinking ginger ale. He says, oh no, you want a beer? I said, oh no, if I started, there wouldn't be enough for both of us. Oh. He says, I got 6 flats in the back. I said, I guess there would be. So, you know, when you got that kind of thing, and you're pretty much hooped, right? So George took me through this thing, and I had a profound experience. But I didn't know I had a profound experience. And it started me on this venture, right? Because step 3 on page 63 is an idea, right? It's an idea that if I follow through the rest of the steps, I could close the deal in step 11. I could have this relationship that they talked about in step 3 that would have all the elements of way living that answered all my problems. Do I believe this was necessary? I didn't have to understand that. All I had to see was those that went before me said the basis of their life was the way it was because they came to formulate a relationship with something greater than themselves. Their more religious members call it a God consciousness. I call it the spirit of the universe or force or energy. I'm okay with that. It's something that's personal to me today. But it's the same for all of us that they explain in We Agnostics. I bought into that idea. The lack of power is my dilemma. And where and how was I to find this power? That's what this book was about. And where was I to locate it? It was deep down within. I bought into that idea. And I bought into that idea that this force was everything that I would ever need and to supply all that was necessary. And where that came true for me was in step 9. What was the testing of that. My prayers in the beginning was, hey, you all that in a bag of chips? Show me. That's the most powerful prayer. I think you're okay to test God. I think he's big enough to kind of slough it off, right? I remember that prayer. Hey, you all that? Show me. But be prepared to be kind of shocked a bit, right? I'm on the bus going back to make amends. And these people that I had to go see, I haven't seen them in years. And I was kind of on the bus, and it was the last part of the trip going into Quebec. And I never talked to no members before cell phones, and I'm stopping at all the bus stops asking if there's any friends of Bill W. over the PA system. I'm on the front of the bus, and I'm on the last part of the journey. I got about an hour left of the bus ride, and I'm talking to God. And, you always tell a newcomer when they're thinking. They start going, they look like they're jonesing or something like that, right? So I'm getting all ballistic in the chair, and this lady beside me goes, you okay? I'm talking to God. You said you look after me. You said you supply all I need. I said, I don't get you. You said this. You're dropping the ball, man, because look at me. I'm doing my part here, and what are you doing? I'm talking to God like that. Nobody talk to God like that here? And this lady beside me goes, you okay? I said, yeah, I got to go meet you. She goes, yeah, I had to do that too. I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous for the last 20 years. Funny guy. I remember looking funny. And that's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. This thing opens you up to see how God works in each, or creative intelligence, how God's fingerprints are on everything. And how the start of this thing is, it starts with yes, not no. Hey, can you come work the phones? Yeah. Can you come set up the home group? Yeah. Can you come do this? And you'll meet other people that will navigate you through a life that's beyond anything you could ever imagine. Today, the life I have is, I was sitting talking to that guy, and I said, if you knew what lied ahead of you, and I tried to explain to you, I'd undersell it. It's been the most amazing thing. I've traveled around the world. I've worked with film crews. I've been personal assistant, bodyguards to people. I've traveled with them. I've been on yachts. I've been on the Eiffel Tower. I stood where Hitler stood, where they hit the flag, and they overcame. I stood on the beaches of Normandy, crying, smoking a cigar, with the joy and the peace of my life. But the most spectacular things that I have in my life is the freedom I have with my wife and my kids. The peace that I have with these people, and just the simple things that I would have never gave 2 thoughts of, that gives me the greatest joys when I think about it. I was traveling along Highway 10. I got about 10 more minutes here, right? 5. So I was traveling around Highway 10, and there was a mother duck with 4 babies on rush hour. I stop my truck. I get out of the truck, and 2 babies can't get up over the curb. And before, I would never do that because I think everybody's looking at me. And I went real quiet, and they became still, and I picked one up, and I put it up on the curb. And right beside is the sewer grate. And I picked the other one up, put it on the street, and I stood back, and they went to the mother, and the mother looked at me and just went, quack, quack. I stood back, put my hands on my hips, and I went, quack, quack. I think about that all the time, and it's just remarkable. I don't think about Paris, Eiffel Tower on the yachts. I think of quack, quack, like a little nuts. Like they used to put me in my own jail cell with an observation camera. I don't know why I misunderstood. So, I went to Vietnam and with my wife, and that's a whole different story. But I'm in Vietnam, and we're doing this temple, this Buddhist temple. It's called 1,000 stairs, 500 stairs up, 500 stairs down. They're small stairs, and we're up there, and the tourist guy's telling us about everything. And this guy comes up to me while I'm in this group of people, and he's about 5'2" or something like that. And he's a Tibetan monk. I didn't know this. And he put his hand in the small of my back, starts rubbing my tummy, going, "Happy Buddha, Happy Buddha." And I thought, wow. Right? And then he comes back, he wants his picture taken with me and him. He takes a picture and all. I got that picture at home. I looked at it every once in a while. And the tour guy said, he sees something in you that's really remarkable. And he wanted just to acknowledge that. All my years in and out of jail and all those, but never ever walked by me and went, "Happy Buddha, Happy Buddha." So, if you're new to this thing, and don't rob yourself of what's available here. And where it starts is actually in here. It's the keys to the kingdom, and it give you life beyond anything you could ever imagine. There's a freedom in here that you'll become so amazed with your story. And that's it. I want you to be amazed with your story. I am amazed with my story. You know why I'm amazed with my story? Because it's not my story. It's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous that's available to each and every one of you. That conflict that I see you struggling with, I understand that conflict. You don't have to struggle with it anymore. We can find peace with this thing. This is the recipe to peace that I can make with me and the world around me. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we could find peace. We could see how our benefit can help others. I touched the surface of my story. Just touched the surface of it. But I've found a peace and a happiness here that I wish for everybody. And thank you for asking me. It's been a real joy, and God bless you. Thank you. Awesome. Beautiful.
Oh. Let's go more pictures.